E-commerce offers many unique retail opportunities, not the least of which is being location independent. You can, at least in theory, sell to customers anywhere in the world. However, as the e-commerce market becomes increasingly competitive, even power brands are having to devote more resources to drive growth. That leaves small to medium-sized brands increasingly frustrated as they struggle to increase sales and, more importantly, to make a profit. I'm Jane Singer, and thank you for taking the time to join me here today. It's wonderful to have you as part of our international community that now includes industry professionals like you in over 100 countries. Today, Lesley Hensell, a small business consultant who has spent 2 decades helping companies solve issues in their online retail businesses, joins us here on A Seat at the Table. Lesley has personally helped hundreds of third-party sellers get their suspended Amazon accounts and ASINs back up and running, learn which KPIs actually matter, and how to improve their operations and profitability. In this episode, she discusses strategies small to medium-sized sellers can implement to compete with even giant players, key mistakes she sees companies make when they get started in e-commerce, how sellers can minimize risk while also growing their revenue, and a lot more. Before we get started, if you've ever wondered how you could land a guest spot on podcasts, check out Your Seat at the Table, a new course that teaches you a simple 3-step formula that you can implement for immediate results. You can find the details on our website at seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. I'll also put a link in the show notes. Now let's sit down with Lesley and find out how we can make our e-commerce efforts more profitable and less risky. Lesley, I'm really thrilled to have you on the show. I mean, e-commerce has been such a big part of everybody's existence, particularly in the last few years. So having someone like yourself who has expertise to weigh in, I think is really going to be very meaningful.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. When you look at e-commerce, certainly there was a surge during the pandemic. I mean, Amazon was our lifeline, certainly my lifeline. And now things have sort of moved into the direction of being a little more, I would say, diversified amongst physical retail and online. But Amazon still plays a key role. How can independent sellers and vendors survive, let alone thrive, when they're competing against e-commerce giants?
Oh, that's such a great question. And, I think there's some misconceptions out there in the marketplace right now about how big Amazon really is, for example, in terms of the number of products that are sold on Amazon.com. So during the pandemic, about 65% of the goods sold on Amazon.com in the US were actually sold by third-party marketplace sellers. So these were everything from small businesses operating out of their garage all the way up to somewhat large businesses and mom and pops, everything in between, that were just using Amazon as a platform and a marketplace. So there is a lot to be said for some of these giants allowing all of these small businesses to sell on their marketplace. It would be impossible for an Amazon to actually stock and sell all of the diverse number of products that are currently on its quote unquote shelves in its warehouses. It's not like Walmart where they have a limited shelf space and there's many fewer products available.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think we often overlook that, right? We think of Amazon as being the everything store with, sort of inventory that goes clear to infinity. So I think you make a very good point on that. Now, how can these smaller companies, or maybe, as you said, they're not necessarily that small, but they're also not the heavyweights, right? How can they position themselves? What should they be looking to do in order to maximize their success?
So right now, what we're seeing is that specialty goods are really doing well in online marketplaces. And by that, I mean, If you look at, for example, coffee, let's take
Right.
something easy and generic like coffee. You're not going to compete against Folgers and Starbucks if you're selling your own brand of coffee. They have advertising budgets that are massive. They have name recognition. So what can you do? So you can have special flavored coffees. You can have coffees with MCT oil. There are all of these specialty coffees that you can find out on Amazon and on Shopify stores and other marketplaces where people are doing really well. You don't have to compete with the big boys head on. You have to have an offering that is not a big enough market segment for them to invest in. So where I'm seeing my clients that are private label sellers doing really well is in finding these niches and in kind of inventing new niches themselves by looking at demand.
That's really such a great insight. And I think we often overlook that. We forget that you don't have to necessarily slam your head into a brick wall. You can try to see if there's a way to go around it. And I think you're right that doing a little bit of research and identifying a niche that you can specialize in, but that, as you're pointing out, isn't really worth a big player to develop because they can't scale it to the level they'd need to for it to be profitable for them. That leaves an awful lot of turf for everybody else.
It absolutely does. And if you do some product research, it's really fascinating. You can take any category around your house that you can think of and go to an Amazon or search out there on the web, and you're going to find these specialty goods that never would have occurred to you before. This summer, I wanted some new pool toys. So I went and on Amazon and I was looking up pool toys, and there are well-known brands and things that you would find in a big chain store like Leslie's Pool Supplies. But then there are all of these little products from these mom and pop sellers who've developed relationships with manufacturers. There are so many products. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it really is. You know, when you think about it, that is one of the joys, right, of shopping on these various marketplaces or even just in online in general. You're able to find these unique things that you never would find elsewhere simply because the constraints of having to have any one retailer hold that much physical inventory. And you're right, people do like that. I mean, people need basics, but people also want the joy of something that's a bit more special and unique.
Absolutely, they do. And, another interesting part of shopping on Amazon is looking for, there's all these specialty groups you can look for. They're starting to have badges for Black owned business and women owned business. You can tell if someone is a small business. There's Made in America. There's all these other badges. So if you have a particular desire to support a certain type of business or a certain country that something's manufactured in, you can literally find anything that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what are some of I mean, you've been doing this for a long time and you have a tremendous amount of expertise. What are some of the typical mistakes that you see companies making when they're trying to establish themselves in e-commerce?
So, right now is the greatest time in the history of the world to launch a new product online. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. There are all of these online marketplaces that are almost like business incubators. So you or I can take a few $1,000s, go have a product manufactured, put it up on Amazon, on eBay, and other sites, and see if it sells, see if it's even
Right.
worth selling. But too many people take an if you build it, they will come attitude toward e-commerce. They think just because the potential number of consumers is enormous in whatever country or marketplace you're selling on, that it automatically means people are going to go come and buy the thing. That is not true. So you still have to invest in great listings, great customer service, excellent photography, and remember that you are competing against the biggest boys. Everyone is the same. You're competing against large companies that have big marketing budgets, but you can still make your stuff look as good as theirs. You just have to do the work. So this set it and forget it, or if you build it, they will come of e-commerce. That's just not true. I think a lot of folks out there have sold that dream that, you just throw the product up there and woo, everything goes great. It takes ongoing work and improvement. And that doesn't matter if you're a small business person operating on your own, or if you're a mid-sized to large company, you've got to invest the time. If you look out on some of these marketplaces, you'll even see large brands that have not invested the time in their listings to make the products look great, and they do not sell well.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Lesley, because it really is something that needed to be said. I think you're right. People have been sold the dream that online it has no costs to it. And like you said, you just set it and forget it, plug and play, where it is competitive. You can win, but you have to, as you're pointing out, do the work. And if you're willing to spend a little bit of time, as you're pointing out, to find a niche product and really focus on how do you present it properly, you can succeed. But I think you're right. There's such a myth about online is just this, sort of unlimitless fountain of customers that'll buy anything you put up there.
Right. That the demand never ends. There are so many sellers that I know of all sizes who've ended up with a warehouse full of goods or a garage full of goods that either there just wasn't enough market demand or they didn't do a great job rolling it out. There's also specifically on Amazon, there's something called a honeymoon period. And it's the first 30 days that you're up. And sometimes it goes maybe 90 days. But there's this honeymoon period where Amazon treats every time you come up in search results as magic. And every time someone clicks on your product, it's like magic. It's almost like you get extra points in the SEO that you wouldn't get 6 months down the road. You've got to treat that period of time like the magic it is. It's just like a physical rollout of a product in a store. No one messes around with that. No one's like, we'll just put the stuff in a Walmart. It's just going to sell. No one does that. You have an advertising campaign, social media campaign. You do all the things. You've got to treat it the same way on Amazon. It's a rollout. Treat it like it is. Take advantage of the honeymoon period.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important that you pointed that out because you don't really think about it. And you're right. People get caught up in that early success that, I put something up there. I got a sale. I got another sale. This is easy. And then suddenly, right, everything dies and you wonder what happened.
Continually work it because there are new competitors all the time. It's interesting that online is the great equalizer and that you can compete against large businesses, but you're competing against all businesses, everyone, even businesses in other countries that are directly shipping to people in your country. There's so much competition that you just have to continually stoke the fire on your own listing and your own advertising.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, you don't realize it. On the one hand, that low barrier to entry enables anyone to get in, but at the same time, it enables everyone to get in. So I think what you're pointing out, right, is it's something you don't think about, that, you could get in easily, but so can everybody else.
Yes, but at the same time, we all know this. We've all seen it. There are so many people who do approach online as a get rich quick, even in the business space. It's not just entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small businesses. It's large businesses who are like, we'll just add this other channel and things will magically happen. Right. So the people who work it are the ones who are going to survive. So it's true. There's so much competition. A lot of that competition naturally falls away because they don't put the head down and do the hard work. And they did once set it and forget it. And really quickly, they find out that's not going to happen.
I think you're right. A lot of very experienced retailers found that out the hard way when everybody jumped into e-commerce, even before the pandemic, but certainly as the pandemic pushed a lot more business online. And a lot of very experienced retailers as well didn't really sit down and think about the different environment, as you're pointing out, the different costs that they might face. So a lot of people really were caught out and, found it to be not very profitable. Now
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's great that you brought up the cost too, because I think people get really excited by the idea of not having rent and not having some of the expensive parts of retail. And they don't realize you've still got to have bodies to pack all of the items that go out. You got postage for all those items, even if you've got a great deal with FedEx or UPS. It's still going to cost you for every single one of those items. There's still a lot of expenses. And, there's an old, I know every industry says know your numbers, but
Right.
in e-commerce, people say it almost with a laugh because
Right.
there are so many businesses that do not bother to calculate. They just assume. They assume it's going to be cheaper. And so they
Right.
wait till the month is over or the quarter's over or the year is over. And they're like, oh my goodness, that actually cost a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the whole sort of myth surrounding e-commerce, was that it didn't have any of the costs. If you had a store, as you said, you have to pay rent, you have to pay staff, you have whatever other costs are, fit out for the store. Whereas online, wow, you just have a website, right? $19 a month for web hosting, and that's it. And people who should have known better actually looked at it that way, and then found out, as you're pointing out, you need people, just people in different job functions. You have expenses. They're just different expenses, but at the end of the month, they're certainly there. We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Oh, absolutely they are. And also, like for example, so many businesses I work with that sell on Amazon realize how much the fulfillment costs add up to. There's this magic of doing FBA, which is fulfilled by Amazon, which even very large sellers and brands do. They either use FBA or they use a 3PL. And either one of those seems like magic. I'm going to ship pallets of goods to these people, and then the orders come and they automatically get filled and I don't have to touch them, and it's amazing. And they don't figure in the per item cost and the shortages and all of the stuff that gets lost and damaged in the warehouse that you have to fight to get your money. There's always the devil's in the details, and there's always details.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about that honeymoon period when companies first get started, right? Particularly on Amazon, and everything looks like it's going swimmingly well. What do they have to do next in order to scale? A lot of people or a lot of businesses really struggle when they get out of that honeymoon phase, and now they need to really scale up and start to make some serious money.
So the painful thing online right now is the ad cost, and you really have to be willing to spend on ads. Whatever you thought your ad budget was going to be, multiply it by 3, because it's going to be that or more. Ad cost on Amazon, and I keep mentioning Amazon, not just because that's what I do most of the time, but it's also the industry standard right now. It is what it is.
Right.
Ad costs on Amazon have more than doubled in the last couple of years. For most keywords, they really went up during, of course, the pandemic, as demand for ads went up on Amazon. So if you want to be successful and really launch a successful brand, you've got to do pay-per-click advertising on Amazon and invest in that. Because during the honeymoon period, you're trying to rank for some keywords, because Amazon is being receptive to you and saying, oh, honey, everything you do is great. So they're over indexing anything that you do, right? Just like a real honeymoon. And then as soon as that ends, you're going to have to prop that up and keep it going with pay-per-click ads. And another thing I strongly recommend, there are 7 images available on any listing. And this is true across all marketplaces. There's multiple images available. On Amazon, it's 7. Right. You've got to use all the images. The search engine loves you for it. They reward you for it. People think it's not a big deal. They throw a product up with 2 images, even large companies. You've got to have babies, hot women, and dogs in your images, because those 3 things sell products. And I'm sorry, but it's true. So, and you've got to have explanatory images that make you want to use the product. And then another thing that is being heavily rewarded by Amazon and by Google is video. You can get a great product video for not that much money, less than $2,000. You can have a gorgeous, or $2,500. You can get a gorgeous branded looking, like a TV commercial video to put on your product. Google, Amazon, everything out there is rewarding a video on mobile. Mobile purchases are now like half of purchases. If you put video up on your listing, it's going to keep that honeymoon period smoothing out going forward a little bit longer.
So in other words, have someone make a video of your product in use, sort of showing people how to use it or showing it in action. Is that what you're referring to?
You can do that, or you can use a brand video that almost looks more like a commercial with a lot of color and motion. It needs to be something that will capture attention and people will actually watch it all the way through. It's just like search engine optimization.
Right.
If someone only watches the video for 1 second, you're not really rewarded by the Amazon algorithm. But if someone watches 15, 20 seconds all the way through, you're going to be rewarded by that algorithm.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point that you don't think of. I mean, when I look on Amazon, I do see that now almost every listing has some kind of a video, and oftentimes it shows you how to use the product. But I think that if people have a product that doesn't need someone to show them how to use it, they probably don't think, oh, I don't really need that, right? That's just for someone who needs a how-to video. So it's good that you brought that up.
Well, and don't underestimate how much people don't read.
Right.
That's the great thing about the how-to videos, also the brand videos and the photos, because even compared to 2 years ago, y'all, people don't read. And about 5-10 years ago, when you looked at listings on eBay and on Amazon, you'd see the bullet points were actually each a paragraph telling you about the product. Oh my goodness, those are a waste of time now. No one will read them. It will intimidate them. They'll click away. You want the bullet points to be a sentence. And then you need these beautiful images and video showing how to use things or showing why they should want it, because we're really turning into more of a visually motivated society instead of a read and comprehend it society.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And certainly having that multimedia approach to presenting your product touches people in different ways, depending upon, as you said, what their preference is and how they like to consume information. So it makes a lot of sense to do that. Now, you talk about, minimizing risk in today's retail environment, which is so important because certainly the glory days of everyone just sitting there shopping online all day during the pandemic because there wasn't really much else to do, now has given way to not only multiple channels where people can buy products, a lot of people heading back to physical stores, but also we see inflation coming in, so consumers are pulling back a bit. How do you advise clients to maximize their revenues, but at the same time keep an eye on risk?
So risk is like the dirty secret of online selling, and people don't understand it until it happens to them. It's kind of
so true, right?
Right. It's kind of like those rare diseases and disorders that you hear of that someone says, oh, I found out I have this terrible thing. And you're like, I've never heard of that. Right. It's kind of like that. So every platform out there, including payment processors like PayPal, not just platforms like Amazon and eBay, have an enforcement division. And the enforcement division is all based on minimizing risk to that platform and to consumers. They don't care about you as a seller. You are the source of risk. You are the potential bad dude. And so what everyone needs to understand is that all these platforms have massive divisions with thousands of people working for them who are looking out for fraud, money laundering, counterfeiting, inauthentic products, and bad customer experiences. And so when you're fulfilling orders on any of these platforms, you have to remember your job isn't just to make the customer happy. Your job is to make sure that you do not do anything to trigger some kind of enforcement against your company. And that enforcement could be suspending your account, blocking your account, which means it's never coming back, or they say it's never coming back.
Right.
My job is to get it back if it gets blocked. And we're taking down a particular product. Sometimes they'll just take down one individual product. So product quality is so important. You have to remember, this isn't like a store. In a brick and mortar store, the store manager, the store staff, they're kind of that backstop. They're making sure that the customer is getting what the product says. When it comes in that carton and they're unloading it on the shelf, they make sure that it's really a blue shirt, not a green shirt.
Right.
But with e-commerce, there's no stopgap. So this enforcement arm is like a post-transaction stopgap, making sure that the seller is really doing what they're doing. So for large companies, sometimes they don't have good SOPs and they're not really supervising their e-commerce employees the way they need to. So they'll end up losing their Amazon presence, eBay presence, Walmart presence, whatever it is, because they have unsupervised employees without written SOPs running these businesses and making mistakes.
Wow. It's interesting you point that out, because you're right. In e-commerce, the onus really is very heavily on the seller. And I have heard tales of woe, really horrific tales of people being shut down for the exact reasons that you're mentioning. So it is really very difficult on the seller side to be on top of that.
Well, and a lot of larger companies think it can't happen to them.
Right.
I have a seller that's a client that does $1 billion a year on Amazon that has been suspended twice, once for 1 week and once for 2 weeks. It was very painful.
Yes.
At one point, they didn't know if they were ever going to come back. You can imagine how many employees they have and the infrastructure they have. I have worked for major brands that you have all heard of that have had their seller accounts blocked, or more often with those larger companies, larger brands, it's individual products that are blocked from selling on Amazon. And some of these are things that sell hundreds or thousands of units per day, that suddenly that revenue stream is cut off. Now, there are times when it was innocent mistakes or bad data because of sellers that complained and it really wasn't as bad as it sounded. But for these bigger companies, 2/3 of the time, it was them. They made mistakes. They had bad product quality. They weren't watching on what they were doing in their own operations. And then it creates this huge fire drill, because you're losing money every single day. You've built the infrastructure, you've got the employees, you've got to pay, and all of a sudden your products aren't moving. It's very stressful.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's good you brought that up, that people really need to, in advance, have systems in place that will prevent that. You never can 100% prevent, but you can certainly mitigate this from happening.
Yes. So my very favorite strategy, and it's Amazon specific, but in my language, but you could use it anywhere. I call it always be improving your worst ASIN, because an ASIN is a product on Amazon, like a UPC. It's an ASIN. Right. Amazon Standard Identification Number. So always be improving your worst ASIN means you look at your catalog and how big it is. You decide how many ASINs you need to be improving at any given time. So let's say you've got 100 ASINs, then that means you need to improve 2 a week. So you'll go through the whole catalog in a year. You look at your return rates, and then you look for the products like the legit returns. You discard reasons like bad address, but you look at the real return rates and see the ones that are out of line. Anything over 2%, you need to pay attention, because you're losing money on those products. When people return those products, you don't just lose the sale, you eat the fees. You eat most of the fees, not the referral fee, but everything else, the pick and pack and all that, you eat it, the postage, if you're shipping yourself, you eat it. And so your losses on the individual sales can actually make you lose money on the entire ASIN, right? If your return rate is too high, even if it's just 7-8%, all of a sudden margin's gone. So you look at your return rates, and then you look through all the other data that you have on that platform and the reasons people are giving. And you have to be open-minded. Yes. So many people don't want to believe buyers. But if someone says, I didn't get a shampoo conditioner combo. I got 2 shampoos. And you see that over and over again. Obviously, someone has prepped that product wrong, right? So you look through the data and find the reasons. If you're always improving your worst ASIN by improving the packaging or changing the listing or changing the prep or, changing how it's actually being shipped out of your facility, your profitability goes up without doing anything except selling the same stuff. And also, if you make the tough decision, I'm not going to sell product X anymore because it's not appropriate for e-commerce, it's breaking too much in transit, we have a manufacturing problem we need to fix, whatever it is, killing off that bad product can actually help you tremendously in the short term while you fix it.
Yeah, that's really a good point that we don't think about. I think most of us, at least in the last, I'd say probably 2 decades, have been so focused on the sell side, on the top line, that nobody's really paid a tremendous amount of attention to the bottom line. And then that ends up, biting you in the back, so to speak, because sooner or later that creeps up on you. So I think it's good that you're pointing out how to analyze that and where to look for these sort of holes in your profitability.
Well, and it seems like a minor point. It seems like, oh, that's way too much detail, way too much effort. But the clients that I've had who've invested the time to do this have come back to me and said, wow, that was shocking. Like they didn't even realize, they weren't even running their return rates to figure out, I only have 2 products that have a lot of returns. Everything else, it's under 1%. Right. I've got to fix those 2. I had one guy who sells Nike clothing. And when he did this, he figured out there was one single line of clothing that was responsible for this way outsized number of his returns, because that particular line of clothing ran too small under the Nike brand. So people weren't getting the expected fit. It was like runner's clothing. So right. Obviously people knew what size they were for the Nike runner's clothing. It was all too small. And he was like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And he returned it all to Nike. He sent it all back for credit on his account and stopped selling it. And it turned everything around for him. So if it's the torture of going through the data, I get it. And people think they don't have time. They're so busy filling orders, right. filling orders. But if you run the data, you'll find out, wow, maybe I shouldn't even be filling all these orders.
Well, that's just it, right? Sometimes we have to figure out, as you're saying, what's the weakest link and make the tough decision to get out of that product if we're not making any money on it and it's just dragging everything down.
Well, and continuous improvement has been a mantra in manufacturing since the early 1980s.
Right.
And why shouldn't it apply to e-commerce? It absolutely should. And sometimes when you find a problem, it's as simple as, oh, my listing detail page is confusing. People think they're getting a 3-pack and they're getting a 2-pack, or people don't understand the size. We need to add a sizing chart. Sometimes it is literally, when you put all the labor in, it's a $50 improvement that will last you for years and will reduce your return rate. So it's not always like I've got to redesign the world. Sometimes it's just super, super simple. Why wouldn't we have continuous improvement in e-commerce? I think it again goes back to the set it and forget it mindset and the hustle. Everything e-commerce, even in big companies, it's crazy to me, even with big brands, when it comes to the e-commerce part, they're all about the hustle. And the hustle isn't the boring stuff I do, like continuous improvement and risk management. But wow, you can make more money doing continuous improvement and risk management.
Yeah, well, I think that what you're pointing out, the timing couldn't have been better, because we're seeing a huge mindset. I don't want to say it's a shift, because that almost sounds like it's happening really fast, but certainly a evolution, shall we say, in the focus being shifted from 100% on the top line to starting to realize that the bottom line is critical as well. And if we don't take care of the bottom line, we might not have a top line at some point. So I really, I think what you've shared is really important right now. Well,
thanks. I agree. And I think the coming months, there's going to be there's already started to be a shakeout in e-commerce. There were these large aggregators out there that were buying up all of these private label brands, and some of them have folded now. There's consolidation going on. And it's like with any newer industry that has dramatic growth, and there's consolidation. But also, there was so much hyper growth during the pandemic. There's always a correction, even when the growth was real. The growth was real because people were all online. But as you said earlier, you're absolutely correct. People are going back to brick and mortar. They're worried about inflation in the economy. They're pulling back and just buying essentials. Time is ripe for a correction. So when there's going to be a correction, the people who survive are the ones who focus on old school fundamentals. I guess, Jane, this is a product of my age, that, when you're older and you look at big picture, you're like, old school fundamentals. Are we making a profit on this product? Do we have quality issues? Let's look at our numbers every day. It's going back to those ABCs of business instead of, I'm just going to hustle and throw it on more marketplaces.
Exactly right. I think everything that you've pointed out are things that experienced people know but need to be reminded of, and newbies into the market need to learn in order for anybody to be able to basically survive in this economic shift where the money might not be flowing quite so fast. You've shared so many interesting things, Lesley. Where can people connect with you? Where can we find you?
So our website is riverbendconsulting.com. And we do this crazy thing where we have a phone number there, and you can call and talk to a human, which I know is rare these days.
But very important.
Yes, it is, because our clients are facing really complex problems. A lot of times they're in a panic mode, they're in an emergency. And so they need to be able to talk to a human right away. Then also, if you head on over to LinkedIn and put in Lesley Hensell, I post content about e-commerce and Amazon almost every day. Wow. I love to connect with people there. And that way, if you ever do have a problem down the line, you can search and find me there.
Excellent. I'm going to put all of those links in the show notes as well, so that people can definitely be able to connect with you. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing so many great insights. I've learned a tremendous amount. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me here on A Seat at the Table. If you've enjoyed this episode or learned something from it, I'd love to hear about it. If you'd like to support the show, please hit the subscribe button. And if you can take a minute to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or other channels, that would be fabulous. And check out our podcast website, seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. And while you're there, take a look at Your Seat at the Table, a new podcast course that will show you step by step exactly what you need to do to land those prestigious guest spots on podcasts. Being a guest on a podcast is a great way to gain visibility and grow your authority. Your Seat at the Table gives you a detailed roadmap with templates to teach you exactly how to achieve this. So head on over to seatpodcast.com. And if there's something you'd like to share, ideas, suggestions, or comments, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining me today and being part of our international community. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.